juncture, I want to thank our sponsors for making this morning school happen. Without their engagement, we could not hold important discussions on subjects that are all on your minds this morning. The American Council of Engineering Companies of Arizona is devoted to promote the interests of engineers and land surveyors in private practice. Its member firms employ over 5,500 employees in the independent private practice of consulting engineering and land surveying in the state. If you are from the ACEC, would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you for being here. The Arizona Rock Products Association is the oldest mining association in Arizona. This trade organization has for more than 60 years represented companies producing nearly all the aggregate materials in the state. If you are from ARPA, would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. The Arizona chapter of the Associated General Contractors of America is Arizona's oldest and most influential not-for-profit association of general contractors, subcontractors, and other construction industry affiliated firms. They are engaged in highway, heavy, industrial, and municipal utility construction. If you're from AGC, would you please stand to be recognized? The County Supervisors Association has for more than 30 years served as a nonpartisan forum for county officials to address important issues facing local constituents. They provide a mechanism to share information and develop a proactive state and federal policy agenda. CSA members include the 61 elected supervisors from Arizona's 15 counties. If you're from CSA, would you please stand to be recognized? High Ground Public Affairs specializes in dealing with complex issues on behalf of clients who face challenges or seek opportunities on a variety of governmental and public affairs levels. High Ground's team members have over 50 years of combined experience on Arizona issues, and I think 49 of those years is Chuck Coughlin's. If you are from High Ground, would you please stand to be recognized? And finally, the League of Arizona Cities and Towns seeks to promote local self-governance, municipal independence, and to provide professional and high-quality assistance to the municipal governments in the state. If you're from the League, would you please stand to be recognized? Our panelists this morning don't really need an introduction. Senator Karen Fann represents LD1 and is president of the Arizona Senate. And someday she'll get a budget out by crossover week. Thank you for being here. Representative Charlene Fernandez represents LD4 and is the minority leader of the Arizona House of Representatives. And someday when she's Speaker of the House, she'll get a budget out by crossover week as well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Representative Noel Campbell also represents LD1. He is chairman of the House Transportation Committee. Thanks for being here, sir. Supervisor Jack Sellers represents Maricopa County's District 1. He was appointed to the post in February of last year. Good luck on your re-election, or rather on your election this year. Mayor Jen Daniels is the mayor of the town of Gilbert. She has sat on the council since 2009, and she is not seeking re-election this year. Can you tell us your life plans?
If anybody knows that, let me know.
Thank you, Mayor. And finally, we have Rocky Moretti, Director of Policy and Research of the Road Information Program. Mr. Moretti has been with TRIP since 1992. He researches, writes, and edits numerous state and national reports, and often cited by local and national media in numerous transportation issues. Is it okay if I call you Rocky? All righty. Again, thank you for being here. Let me ask Senate President Karen Fann, where are we on the budget?
Working on it. No, we're just kind of fine-tuning the last little details between the House and the Senate. And then at that point, we will be able to share more of the information with our colleagues on the left side of the aisle as well as the rest of them. And then the real work starts is trying to negotiate it with the governor.
So just real quick, what's your time frame was crossover week, and then we moved a week, and then a week, and then right now it seems like we're not really sure when, but best guess.
So we are roughly at least a month ahead of time, if not more, than where we normally are in this process right now. So we're actually doing really well. We did not foresee the huge amount. We have a record number of bills that were dropped in the House and the Senate. So that has taken up a lot of staff time trying to process all of those. So that has given us a little hiccup there. But outside of that, we're actually at least a month ahead of time.
Thank you. So no real time frame as for when we get the budget out, right? Am I guessing?
No, but
this
we're
right?
getting close.
Okay. Representative Charlene Fernandez, they are getting close. What's your, how do you feel about where you are with the budget process at this point?
We don't have a budget process. It's on. So we just wait until the other side decides to share those details with us, and then we talk about what's in the budget.
Representative Campbell, are you getting briefings from your leadership about where you are, where they're at on the budget?
Well, we get a broad overview, but we're not down into the weeds yet. So I've had 2 small budget meetings just to talk about the major outlines of the budget, but nothing specific yet.
So not the specific details.
That's right.
And I suppose Representative Fernandez can just go to your office and get those details, broad outlines from you.
I'd love to have her come down anytime.
All right, so because we live in the great state of Maricopa County, we often don't see the road problems, the road woes, the troubles that other counties have. So let me ask Mr. Moretti first. You've seen the rest of the country. You've traveled. How is Arizona's transportation system compared to other states? What do you see are our real advantages, and where do you think our weaknesses are?
Trip is going to, we put out probably around 15 or 20 state reports a year, and so I mean, Luigi's correct in that we really keep an eye on what's happening across the country, and we're releasing a report today that will look specifically at Arizona. What jumps out when we look at the numbers are a couple of things. One is the tremendous level of growth. Obviously, you know that here living in Arizona, the state's rate of growth in terms of travel is the 6th highest in the country. And we look at the traffic congestion numbers, which are increasing very quickly. Another number that's very disturbing is that traffic fatalities are up significantly, are up 31% in the last 5 years in Arizona. Now, we don't have the analysis to determine why. It's far greater than the increase in actual vehicle travel. And so, as we're going to point out in the report, there's a significant benefit to putting in just logical roadway safety features. You see huge improvements in those numbers, and that's critical. And we also monetize in the report. We estimate in the Phoenix area, the average motorist is spending an additional $2,009. That's the lost time due to congestion. That's the economic cost of traffic crashes, and then the cost of driving on rough roads. So we see significant challenges, and then on top of it, we see a huge loss of funding sustainability. We're going to see, because of increased fuel efficiency, that the average intake from motor fuel taxes is going to drop 30% over the next decade, and the adoption of electric vehicles, which are small now, are going to accelerate very quickly over the next decade. And so Arizona really has some huge challenges.
So we have a funding stream in which not as much increase is happening because more and more people are shifting to alternative fuel vehicles. But you mentioned that you're not quite sure what's causing a 30% spike in, did you say accident rates or fatality rates?
Traffic fatalities.
Traffic fatalities. What's your best guess? Why do you think this is happening? And is this an outlier in the country?
Traffic fatalities have increased somewhat, but in the last couple of years across the country have stayed at the same level. We're also starting to see the benefits of safer vehicles. When we buy a newer vehicle, there's all these features that I know that may be somewhat irritating, but lane departures, all those technologies are starting to have an impact. And so when you see those numbers increasing, we also know that pedestrian and bicycle fatalities are increasing dramatically. And on one hand, it's a reflection of people are getting out more. They're riding their bikes, they're walking. These are all positives. But you need the infrastructure in place to keep non-motorists safe, and you need the safety features at intersections along lanes to keep the motorists safe as well.
So let me pull in Supervisor Sellers. When you're hearing these statistics, do you agree with those? Do you find validation in those? What is your experience in Maricopa County? And I'm asking the question because, like I said, I think in Maricopa County, we do have better roads. We do have a better infrastructure than obviously the rest of the state. But what is your experience?
Well, yes, we have great infrastructure plan right here in Maricopa County because 20 years ago we had leaders that put together a plan and had funding in place to support that plan. Today we don't have a plan. And, you know, I guess one of my big concerns is that I think there's a fairly good prospect that in next year we will get some major funding from the federal government for infrastructure. And the only way you get back the dollars that we send to Washington is if you have a plan and the money to support that plan. And we don't even have the money right now to put a plan together to go after those funds when they become available. And, you know, even though we have a great infrastructure system here today, compared to other metropolitan areas, the other metropolitan areas aren't growing at 200 people a day. And if we don't get a plan soon, we can't maintain the lifestyle that attracts people to come here. So it's really critical that we do this.
What's preventing you from coming up with that plan?
Long-term funding. You know, we keep putting one-time dollars into projects, which really is a nice thing. I mean, it makes great headlines, but we don't have money in our budget to fund a statewide system. And even as we build these projects, like we just completed South Mountain Freeway here, which is a beautiful, nice project. And fortunately, that project included maintenance as a part of the bid, but as we keep building these projects, we don't have the money to maintain them going forward. And I just completed a 6-year term on the State Transportation Board. And the one thing that really got me while I was traveling around the state with the board is that Maricopa County depends on our entire state infrastructure system to support our economy. And if we don't have a statewide system, we're going to have problems. You know, even with the drastic improvements in capacity and safety we can get from intelligence in vehicles and autonomous vehicles, we don't have the capacity to handle the commerce necessary for our economy going forward and to maintain our lifestyle. So it's really critical that we put a plan together now and get a long-term funding solution in place.
Mayor Daniels, I believe you are going to the State Transportation Board, correct? You are, in fact, replacing Supervisor Sellers.
No one replaces Supervisor.
Oh, I'm sorry. No one replaces Supervisor
I will
Sellers.
attempt to fill that seat.
Can
until
you
we-
speak to the mic, ma'am? Is that?
Yes, absolutely. I'll attempt to absolutely contribute in that space, and excited really to work around the state. I'll be in Marana next week for our first State Transportation Board, and I still have to get confirmed by the Senate, so a little
Don't worry,
plug
I'll take
for
care
that
of it,
for
don't
just a
worry.
second. But
All
yeah,
right, no
excited
problem.
about that.
You're confirmed. Gilbert is probably one of the fastest growing parts of the valley. You know, when I was out there, 13 years ago, there are parts of Gilbert that are pretty rural, but that's changed a lot. And I was just there a couple weeks ago because there's a choir that I had to go to, and it's incredible, the change. What is your experience in Gilbert, and can you briefly describe to us your road funding woes?
Sure, absolutely. And I first want to make a statement about our highway user revenue funds, which I know Noel will talk more about, but really grateful for the effort that our legislature has made over the last 2 sessions to restore that funding, because that is the key to our maintenance dollars in our cities and towns all across the state. So that's a key component of that. We cannot do our job without that. There's $3.1 billion of deferred maintenance in cities and towns across Arizona. And so if you think about what that dollar means, and that transportation and infrastructure is directly tied to economic development. There is a direct link. I will have companies that come to the town of Gilbert, they want to have a conversation about locating in one of our employment corridors, and one of the first things they ask us about is, tell us about freeway access, tell us about your traffic rates, your flow of traffic, tell us how we get access to and from your highway system. Because we are all so interconnected. So my experience on Transportation Policy Committee has been that we have got to work together. We are looking at a Prop 400 extension coming up in the near future. That helps us in Maricopa County for sure, and I hope that we can move forward with a plan in that space. But that doesn't necessarily help us from a statewide perspective. So I'm excited to see the statewide view of transportation, but I can tell you that in Gilbert, transportation has been the key to economic development. We have 260,000 people now in Gilbert. We're the 4th largest city in the state of Arizona, for those of you who haven't come to visit us lately. And we're not quite as rural as we used to be. So absolutely looking forward to the future. And adding technology to that as well is going to be a key component.
Thank you. So a couple of stats that I've researched and gotten help researching. The American Society of Civil Engineers, for example, in a 2015 report card shows that that Arizona has a grade of D+ in roads. The state at that point needs $24 billion to maintain current roads over 25 years. B on bridges. They said 50% of our bridges are more than 50 years old. 19% are functionally obsolete, and 4% are structurally deficient. And a C+ on rail, saying it would require $1.3 billion over 25 years. The U.S. News and World Report ranks Arizona number 11 overall in infrastructure. So we're not so bad. We're kind of middling. Actually, it's better than middling. Number 11, better than the other states. The league, as you mentioned, the League of Arizona Cities and Towns identified $3.1 billion in road maintenance backlog. The County Supervisors Association, in a report in 2018, estimated that funding to repair and maintain roadways and bridges in counties over the next 10 years will fall short by $2.2 billion, so on and so forth. It's a pretty dire picture if you read these reports. A lot of this, in theory, would, or some substantial portion of it, in theory, would be resolved if, for example, Representative Noel Campbell's bill, which is, I believe the right word is stuck in the legislature right now. Is that appropriate? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, this proposal would bring the to 36 cents per gallon, the gas tax, and will also impose new taxes on alternative fuel vehicles, among other things. Why is it stuck in the legislature? What's the problem?
It's lack of political will. That's how I would describe it. It's an amazing thing. I mean, we know what needs to be done in this state. There's no doubt the needs that we have in this state. And transportation needs are essential to this state, because without it, we can't do the growth that we want to do. We have this tremendous influx of people and automobiles coming in here, and we're not prepared for it, and it shows. I just wanted to make a quick reference that we're the 3rd highest state in the nation with fatalities in our rural area. That's how bad it is. And I have my own reasons why I think that we do have such high fatality rates in our rural areas, and it has to do with our roads. But what we spend so much time talking about what we already know, the needs that we have in this state. And we really spend very little time talking about why can't we get it done. And that's what I work with every day. I work with the political aspect of this. Why can't we get a transportation funding bill through the legislature? And I'll just jump right into it. It is not my Democratic colleagues in the House. They support what I've been trying to do. It is the resistance of my Republican members to take the political leadership and courage that's needed to vote yes for a permanent funding source for transportation. And I understand their predicament because, you know, it's politics. But sooner or later, if not now, when? We're going to have to face this issue. And the longer we keep putting it off, the harder it's going to be, the worse our transportation is going to be. So it's a political will, in my opinion.
Representative Fernandez, can you confirm that all of your, all 29 members of the Democratic Caucus are in support of this proposal?
I never commit all 29 members.
Oh, not 29, all 29 members.
But I think, you know, Mr. Campbell is correct. We do listen to our constituents. We go door to door, and right behind public education is infrastructure needs. I come from an area, LD4, which includes most of Yuma County. We're right on the international border with Baja, Mexico, and also Sonora, Mexico. And we also are on the state line with California, where they are investing in infrastructure needs. So we know how important it is. We have $1 billion industry in leafy greens in Yuma County. We know how important it is to transport it from one place to another. And just like Mr. Seller said, Supervisor Seller said, Maricopa County is dependent on the rest of what's going on in the state.
Is there a substantial support in your caucus for this proposal?
There's substantial support. They definitely want to talk about it, work on it. You know, we were very much against the $90 million that we sent back. We had $90 million already targeted for infrastructure needs here in Arizona, and we passed a bill. The legislature, I should say, passed a bill to send it back. You know, we can't be doing that. We need every penny. My constituents tell me we need every penny. We listen to our civil engineers in our area. Unlike every place else in the state, I guess, our civil engineers are telling us that we need to invest in infrastructure.
Senate President Fan, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a co-sponsor of this bill.
I am. So is Speaker Bowers.
Last time you were on a radio show, I was also on that radio show, you effectively said that chances of this proposal passing is low in the state legislature. You know, it's been a couple of weeks, and as I mentioned, this proposal, as of right now, is not moving in the legislature. Representative Campbell said it's a lack of political will. What are your thoughts, ma'am?
Thank you. And as Representative Campbell is correct, it's stuck over in the House. And it is virtually politics at this point. I cannot begin to tell you how many ugly emails and Facebook posts that I and Rusty Bowers, Speaker Bowers, has gotten because we actually co-signed on it. So heaven knows how many poor Representative Campbell have gotten. So it's, yeah.
Could you send those emails to me?
And it's that, no. No, I'm not stirring the pot any worse than it is.
Okay.
But yeah, we have a body of our members who are conservative, which many of us are, I mean, certainly, but we also need to be pragmatic about what are the things that government is actually supposed to be funding, and this is one of those, which is kind of a novel concept, right? But they, you know, they don't understand, I'm in the highway construction business, so I get this. Kevin and I started together 35 years ago, Kevin Woodenberg, so we understand what goes on out there. I-40 is so bad right now that the truckers, when they hit our potholes, it is sending a message back, because everything's computerized now, right? Sending a message back to their home bases that indicates that they were in some kind of an accident. That's how jarring.
Right?
Yes, that's how jarring. And this is why the truckers support this, because they understand this. We have an issue here partly is because Maricopa County, they do have a special fund. They do an amazing job down here with what they have to work with, and the bulk of the population is here in Maricopa. So they don't really get the concept, other than the traffic congestion on I-10 and going to and from work, they really don't get the picture of what's going on everywhere else in rural Arizona, or how much Maricopa County actually is lacking in funding to do the other things they need to do. And I'm just going to close this part on this note. We will never get this done until the voters of Arizona realize this is a priority and start putting pressure on it. This is no different than, I'm going to say, Red for Ed. You know, the funding of education, granted we came out of a bad slump, but it took the Red for Ed movement for us to, you know, say this is important to our voters, to our constituents. And that's the piece we have been lacking in transportation. We need the citizens to put pressure on our legislator and tell us this is important, we want you to do this.
So if this proposal gets to your chamber, what are the chances of the state Senate passing it?
I'm like Representative Fernandez, we never commit anything, but I can tell you the vast majority of the Republicans will be no on it. They don't want their name attached to a tax increase, particularly in an election year. If the 13 Democratic caucus members stick together and vote for it, I will be number 14, and I'm not sure if I can get 2 more, but I will try and get them.
Well, you need more than, you need a 2/3 vote, right?
Yep. Well, we will
Yeah, you
if we
do.
actually want to push it through to actually circumvent the ninth floor, yes.
So, I'm sorry, you're talking about
to
just
raise
sending it to
taxes.
the ballot, correct?
Well, we have 2 bills. One is sending it to the ballot, and one is just actually, if we can get a 2/3 vote on the other bill, then we may not have to go to the ballot.
To
So,
raise taxes, though, you need 3/4.
Or 3/4, thank you, Charlene, that's correct.
Mr. Moretti, as they describe the situation in Arizona, I wonder if that's the same thing you're seeing at the national level.
It certainly is. And in fact, my colleague on our staff this morning is in Louisville doing a press conference and on their way to the State House for a transportation rally. States are recognizing this huge challenge. Virginia just this week passed a significant fuel tax increase a year after they did it last year. The legislature in Virginia requested that they do a funding sustainability study. And what the report found, and some of the data was data I cited here, was that between this tremendous increase in fuel efficiency, the adoption of electric vehicles, inflation on top of it, really they weren't even looking at increasing transportation funding. They were increasing the source of that funding just to keep things even. And that's the challenge that now states across the country are facing. Since 2013, over 30 states have put in place significant user fee increases, typically gas taxes, but sometimes registration and licensing fees. So Arizona is not unique. Where Arizona is unique or certainly exceptional is this tremendous level of growth. And so the challenges are even greater here.
So, Supervisor Sellers, when you hear Representative Campbell say there's a lack of political will, when you hear Senate President Fan say maybe what we need is public pressure, mounting public pressure to get this proposal unclogged. What comes to your mind, and what do you think you can do in your end to push this issue?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems we deal with is exactly what we've been referring to, and that is that fuel tax is really a misnomer. It's a user fee. It's as pure as it gets. Have people pay for what they're using. And if we could get that message across, then perhaps we could get this done. The price of fuel changes more than 6% a month frequently, and nobody cares. Nobody really even looks at what the price of fuel is when they fuel up their car every week. 10 cents a gallon costs the average motorist $5 a month. Is that really too much to ask to maintain our system? 10 cents a gallon provides about $400 million a year statewide. And I really applaud what Representative Campbell's trying to do, because not only is he looking at having people pay for what they're using, but he's also attempting to address, I think, as logically as you can at this point, how do you get the non-traditional fuel vehicles to pay their share of use as well? And his bill really covers that, does a nice job. So some way or another, we need to get this done.
So, Mayor Daniels, I think a tax hike is always a pretty big push in the legislature. What we have seen, however, in the last couple of years is that some Republicans who are traditionally averse to, not tax cuts, tax hikes, some Republicans in the last couple of years have become more amenable to tax hikes, for example, or more specifically in the area of K-12 funding, for example. So Senator Sylvia Allen started introducing a proposal to hike the sales tax for education. So there's some real change within the conservative members of the state legislature on tax hikes. On education, however, and it's geared toward education. That hasn't translated into tax hikes for transportation or for any other big major funding issue. What are your thoughts on that? Why do you think that is?
Well, frankly speaking, I think the vast majority of humans are just busy doing and living lives. And I think that as long as we can get from point A to point B, I actually think when we're going to start to see at least some rallying around this issue is when we do the Broadway curve rebuild that's going to start here in the next year, and it will be painful. It will be a very painful process, and I think it will bring to the forefront of everyone's mind what transportation reconstruction really looks like, what putting money and rehabilitation into our roads really looks like. We also have the benefit, frankly, in the state of Arizona. We are a new state. Anybody who's lived on the East Coast, I lived in Boston during the Big Dig. Those are crazy transportation projects that take 20 plus years. We haven't had that experience here out in the West. We don't really understand what that kind of investment and also what that kind of time commitment really looks like. So now is the time to really approach this and to take, all hands on deck. You hear the leadership of this state talking in unison in this issue, and it's time for us to really take this seriously. Now is the time to prepare for what the next 20, 30, and 40 years looks like.
What you're saying is that unless we feel the pain, we're not going to act. And I think it's a human tendency that unless we're on the precipice of something dramatic, we don't really think about it as much.
I actually think leaders do. And I think that's why you hear Representative Campbell and President Fan talking about this. Leaders actually do try to preempt, true leaders try to preempt the pain. But unfortunately, I think the vast majority of people are just, living a good life in Arizona, and we have this incredible quality of life in the state. I don't want to undermine that. But I do think that leaders have to look forward, and it's up to us to sort of rally the troops and get everybody moving in the same direction.
Representative Fernandez, ma'am, the approach, I think, by the state in the last couple of years, if there is a big problem, we'll fix it. So the funding is targeted, it's coming out of the general fund, and it's geared toward something specific. So let's say, for example, the new freeway that we just, I'm sorry, not the new freeway, the widening, for example, of our freeways, and it's a specific project. We have, the governor's proposal, for example, this year is to put in optic cables, calling them smart highways. So it's targeted, and it's not an increase in an existing revenue stream or a new revenue stream. It's there's a problem. Let's fix that problem. Fix what we can right now. Do you agree with that analysis, and why do you think that is?
Not at all. I don't agree with it at all. It's putting a Band-Aid on it. I think at this point in time, we should be looking ahead at innovative things that we can be doing. We should have already had money appropriated year after year after year, where many of our counties and our cities will know what the budget is, and they're able to target what they need to do for the next 5, 10 years. We should be doing innovative things like a high-speed train from Phoenix to Tucson. Those are the things that we should be thinking about, but instead we're thinking about fixing our potholes because we've let our state go. We have not funded our HERF system. We have been sweeping that money. We've kind of gotten back to where we should be in 2008. We need to be forward thinkers. Again, I look at California, where their legislature put a lot of money into infrastructure. Citizens got upset. They took it to a referendum, and the citizens approved it. So, what we're hearing is that people out there want us to invest in infrastructure, and not just today, but long forward thinking.
So, Representative Campbell, real quick, sir. So, you're proposing a tax hike. There is $1 billion in the state's rainy day fund. So, there's a counter argument, and counter argument I hear from people is that why would we want to increase taxes when it seems like our state is getting, a substantial amount that we are then putting away for the rainy day? So we are getting a lot of revenue, and we can spend that revenue if we want on specific projects. So why do we need a tax cut?
It's always calm before the storm. So first of all, I want to thank President Fan and Speaker Bowers for co-signing my bill. That takes political courage to do that, and I'm really thankful that they did. Secondly, Yeah, we have $1 billion in that rainy day fund, but we need to keep it there for other issues. We need to find our own permanent source for funding for transportation. And one of the things that I'm proposing, and I talked to Representative Fernandez about this, is kind of a grand bargain. Let me give you the kind of basics of this. Senator Mesnard has a tax reduction bill that he got out of the Senate. He got out of the Senate on partisan lines. It was a Republican vote, but it would reduce taxes about $80 million a year, straight line, on out for the future. And that's a good thing, tax reduction. And I'm trying to think, what can I do to get my highway user fee bill passed? And I'm thinking of trying to amend Senator Mesnard's bill onto mine, because then it would be a twofer. We would get tax reduction, and the governor loves that, and we would get Invest in Arizona long term. And the way it would work is the $80 million tax reduction could not be exceeded by the tax increase revenue. So as long as it's $1 under the tax reduction, it does not have to be Proposition 108. It would just take 31 votes in the House and over in the Senate, the same thing. So I think if we were able to do that, and we got that up to the governor, I don't think that he would refuse to sign that, because he talks about tax reduction. He wants to reduce taxes, and this would be a reduction in taxes. At the same time, we're investing in permanent funding for the state of Arizona, which is a transportation need. And I think it would be the way to go. And I would like my colleague, and I've talked to Representative Fernandez about this, and she will definitely comment on it.
So before Representative Fernandez, before we get her commitment on your newest idea, I'm trying to absorb this as fast as I can. By the way, all right. Let me
So
think
am I.
this- All right,
So am I.
let me think this through. So what you're trying to avoid is a super majority requirement by ensuring that the proposal produces a net zero
That's true. That's correct.
in
$1
state
less, at
revenue.
least.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and just let me say, it would be a penny increase per year. 1 penny per year for, let's say, 10 years with an inflator tied to it. And that is such a small amount that who's gonna balk at paying a penny a year extra in fuel? But over 10 years, that's 10-cent increase, or maybe more, maybe a little less, I don't know, but I'm shooting for 10 cents with an inflator, and that will get us great amount of revenue over a period of time. And I think that's a great idea. And if you have better ideas, I wish you'd please help me.
Senator Fan, ma'am.
Can we do 2 cents for 5 years?
I'm sorry, Karen.
Could we do 2 cents for 5 years instead?
No, we could not do that because we have to, well, maybe we could do it. It all depends. It depends on how much of the tax reduction is. I don't want to get in the weeds on this.
Let's get into the weeds of it.
Okay, right.
All right. Senator Fan, what do you make of this new idea?
We've actually been patting that around, just a small handful
All right, so it's
of
only
those
new
of us, so.
to us. It's not new to you.
No.
All right. It's a. Oh, that's
It's a
awesome.
morning scoop.
So you support this proposal, this idea.
I do.
All right, Representative Fernandez, what do you make of this one? And is this new to you? Like it is new to you?
Yeah, we heard about it last night through the grapevine. So a penny per year, how much will that generate the first year?
Well, approximately
About.
$40 million of one first penny, yeah. Penny's $40 million.
I don't even know how we would divvy that up, $40 million. I just, I keep thinking 10 years down the road, my youngest grandchild will be getting ready to go to college. We need, I think Mr. Campbell just said, if you have any other ideas, throw them on the table. I think we need new leaders at the state legislature that have political will, that will decide that we need to put some investment in infrastructure in the state.
Senator Fan, you reacted there pretty strongly.
I did?
Yes, you did.
I didn't say a word.
To the penny?
Yeah, new leaders effectively means, and correct me if I'm wrong, but effectively you're saying that we need Democrats in leadership so you can get this one done. That's what you're saying, right?
Democrats or Republicans with political will.
Right, so, Senator Fan, is this feasible?
What, new leadership?
I guess the people.
No, it's not.
The public will decide in November, right? So I guess they'll find out. But no, this proposal, is it feasible?
Well, it's not only feasible, but it's smart. And we're talking about Representative Campbell's. I just gave you a promotion, by the way. Representative Campbell's is moving that forward. Yes, of course it's feasible. But we need to get some political pressure put behind some of our members to say this is important to us. And 1-2 cents a year is not unreasonable. It totally is not. And if they would just realize what the impact would be on our road system, it would be huge.
40 million would not be an impact. I'm sorry, it just would not be an impact. And I asking our public is going to see through this. So we're going to put a penny on the gas tax, and we're going to give an $80 million tax cut. Our people will see this.
So I think the idea is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Representative Campbell, try and get something done right now. It may not be as big as you would like, but it's something that can be achieved. Your problem is that it's paired with a tax cut.
An $80 million tax cut with a 40 million revenue generating penny.
I would only say you have to, in the legislature and in politics, you have to make progress where you can. I mean, we can do nothing and talk about it and nothing happens, or we can make incremental movements. Now, this is not the way I'd like to do it, but it's a feasible way to do it. And it gives the governor an opportunity to claim victory at the same time we're making progress in transportation issues.
Let me pull in Mayor Daniels and our Supervisor Sellers.
This is way above my pay grade.
Mine too.
It's the morning scoop. So what do you make of this proposal? What about you're not seeking re-election. Maybe at some point you get into the legislature. Who knows? But what do you make of this new idea?
So we have to do something from a gas tax perspective, and I think the League of Cities and Towns, we have this conversation on a very regular basis, and I think it has to do more with modernizing our tax structure than it even has to do with the specific penny or two that we're going to add to the gas tax. The way we see both technology going and the way our vehicles are made, we've got to change the way that we model out long-term funding through the gas tax. It's a declining form of revenue as cars get more efficient, as we become more electric. How are we going to demonstrate that we're ready to take on the next 10 and 20 years in the state without modernizing that? I don't have the exact formula that we need to be using in order to do that. There's smarter people at this table and at the legislature that can help us navigate that. But I will say that a complete modernization of our tax structure needs to take place, and a key component of that is through the vehicle license tax and or the gas tax.
So you're not also committing all of the League's members to supporting this proposal?
I don't think I have the authority to do that, but I can commit Gilbert.
Supervisor Sellers, what do you make of this one, sir?
Well, we have to get something done, but my concern is that if there is any kind of a federal infrastructure plan next year, $40 million a year doesn't give us long-term funding that would support bringing projects to this state. And we're going to miss out. We really need to have leadership that can look at this and say, what does it take for us to maintain the lifestyle that makes this such a great place to live and work?
Representative Fernandez, ma'am, you were going to say something there before Mayor Daniels and Supervisor Sellers.
I think the issue at hand is last year we could easily give $380 million tax cut. We knew, our Republican leadership felt that was very, very important for the state of Arizona, for our residents. They obviously, have, the pulse of what's going on out there, and they gave that $380 million without batting an eye. Why in the world would anyone think that $40 million would be enough to address the needs in all of Arizona, the infrastructure needs? At the end of the day, how can we reconcile that? Our voters will see through this. An $80 million tax cut with revenue equaling $40 million for infrastructure needs in this state is not going to cut it.
And by the way, the Broadway Curve project that's going to start in about a year is a $700 million project.
I'm sorry, the Broadway Curve project. it's starting, it's a $700 million project. All right, so Mr. Moretti, to what extent do you think, let me back up a bit. So we have infrastructure problems like other states. Our roads are newer compared to other states. I have a friend who lives in Ohio, and I call him on the road sometimes, and he hits a pothole and he curses pretty hard. We don't quite have that in Ardua County. We do have that in the rural areas. To what extent are we losing out on the competition because we have good roadways, or maybe better roadways in the urban centers, but not in the rural areas? What have you seen in terms of the experiences of the other states?
You know, what we're seeing, and you heard the mayor reference this to some extent, is obviously people in the private sector are evaluating communities and states in terms of where they're going to expand. You know, one of our findings and reports is that trucking in Arizona is going to double over the next 20 years. Obviously, going to be a lot more stress on the system. But in terms of where businesses are looking to locate, they're certainly looking at the quality of the transportation system, and they're also looking into the future. And I think part of that is looking at local and statewide governments' willingness to address infrastructure issues. Now, I mentioned Virginia. Clearly, states, legislatures are recognizing that their ability to project into the future of what their modernization needs are in terms of transportation then is a message back to the business community that this state is taking these issues very seriously. And so certainly Arizona and every state's in competition with each other in terms of keeping and attracting growth, and the willingness of the public sector of the state legislature to operate in a fashion that says we recognize our future needs and we're going to address them is very critical to the business community's level of confidence that this community is moving in the direction it needs to go.
So at this juncture, I want to open it up to the public for questions. If you have questions for our panel, I think we can take one or two. Go ahead, sir.
I look at this from the economic development side. Mayor Daniels, you're right.
Can you speak to the mic, sir?
The funding that other states are giving from an economic development side, Utah, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, those are our competition for economic development. We're not even matching their spending, not even coming close to it. Where is the political will? And I know you say leadership. Where does the governor get this message? He's an economic development governor.
Who wants to take that?
I'll take it. I'll jump out there because I support our governor immensely, and I understand. He's very proud of his record of being able to improve the economy without raising taxes. I think the message here is exactly what Supervisor Sellers is saying. We have got to get this out of our mind that this is a tax. It is not. It is a user fee. And if we can start changing the mindset on that's what it is, I think we can make some inroads. The second thing is we talk about the narrative. Did you notice that when Representative Campbell dropped his bill, it was all over, not print media, not just print media, but the TV, everything else. Representative Campbell proposing to double the taxes, double the fuel taxes. That killed the bill right off the bat. And that's not the way you try and do it. Whereas, if we had called it a user fee, if the media had been a little more responsible and said, we're trying to solve a problem here, right? We could have said, and if it means phasing it in, I know that Representative Fernandez is not crazy about that idea, but sometimes you just got to move that ball down the field. You can't throw a Hail Mary every time. And maybe phasing it in at 1 or 2 cents a year, and if the media would help us, we might get something done.
I feel the love.
Yeah. We'll remember.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
First of all, we talked about fatalities. If anyone was driving on the freeway. Talking of fatalities, if anyone was driving as I was Sunday night to the airport, they would have seen that an ADOT worker was killed on a construction site. So condolences there, and also a reminder it's a risky business. We're in the public-private partnership business, except there aren't really many projects coming forward. $40 million a year may sound not a lot of change, but the net present value of that's close to $500 million. What about leveraging that with private capital? And I'll throw a number out, and this is a risky proposition for a banker. If you've got $40 million of revenues coming in, say that's just $500 million. By the way, Kevin knows how long we've been talking about this, so you're probably looking at another $2 or $3 billion on top of that the private capital could conceptually provide. Just one other thing, we see Arizona as an attractive place to do business because the conceptualization that we do of the traffic system, I know it's a lot more complicated than this, is that Arizona is 2 traffic systems. It's the spaghetti around Phoenix, which is amenable to shadow tolls, and then the bridges, I-15, I-40, I mean, they're almost bridge characteristics, which from a financing standpoint makes it much more attractive and you can get more debt.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question to that question?
Sure, yeah.
So if we go to private capital, are we talking about toll roads then?
Well, be careful there.
I'm not going to be careful there. I'm a legislator, I can't be careful there.
I think I had my first conversation with the truckers about 8 or 9 years ago, and we believe that the truckers actually, as long as it's structured properly, would welcome this. Now, you may have to do it a little bit differently.
So,
The semantics may have to change so that certainly take tolls out of it.
so I think the idea is try and go leverage money from the state and raise capital elsewhere, right? Like through bonds, for example? Yeah.
Right, and if I might, just very quickly to
Yep.
tug on John. So our business community knows this. The Phoenix and the Arizona Chambers have both endorsed trying to find a solution to this. And they also are very positive and supportive of P3 projects, which we know that helps pull in private financing to match with our public financing. And that's a really great tool in the toolbox.
I'm sorry, David, yes.
I just have a question for Mr. Sellers. You mentioned the federal government, and you mentioned revenue from the state. I'm not sure if folks understood the meaning behind what that means. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that specific item as it relates to if the federal government is to act, is there an opposite reaction that the state has to have? You know what I'm asking? Okay.
Matching dollars.
Matching dollars.
Yeah. How does it work?
Yeah, typically, any time we get federal funding for any infrastructure project, there will be X percentage of federal dollars, but it requires a state match to get that. And with the system we have in place today, we don't have those matching dollars to attract major projects into the state. You know, one of the things that a lot of us talk about is, you know, for our future plan is I-11. And we really, you know, we don't have the money even to, and there appears to be fairly nonpartisan support for accelerating the interest in I-11 now in Arizona. And I'm concerned that we really don't even have the money to do the environmental studies to keep that moving.
Thank you. I think we have room for just one more question. Yes, sir.
This question is concerns the tax hikes for fuel taxes. Why are we so hell-bent on running down the road and turning it up to 36 cents a gallon, and then we just back off completely and leave everything in the hands of the federal government to determine by the cost of living index whether or not our gas taxes will increase further? It's in the Arizona State Constitution that only legislators, representatives, and senators can start a bill to raise taxes. But like we learned with HB 2166 and 218, we turned it over to a bureaucrat, an unelected bureaucrat. Same thing with doing it, giving in to the federal government.
Anybody wants to take that?
I will take that.
Go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, you know, the last time the gas tax was raised was 1990, and $1 in tax revenue in 90 is worth 47 cents today. So inflation is killing us because the cost of maintaining and building and expanding our road system keeps going up. A loaf of bread in 1990 was $1.25. Today it's $2.50 plus, 60% increase. So we have to deal with the inflationary factor. And my staff and the people that I work with say that an inflator is a way to permanently solve the problem if we get the gas tax to a certain level, that we won't have to keep doing this. Now, we can keep falling behind. We're falling behind now. It'll go on. It'll keep going and keep going and keep going. Believe me, I don't like the idea of having to raise fuel fees. But remember this, I estimate 15% of this revenue will be generated by people coming through Arizona. And also, my bill includes taxes or revenue fees on natural gas and propane that are not taxed now. And it has a provision for hybrids and electric, which is fair. So everybody will use the roads in Arizona. Well, not everybody. If you ride a bicycle, you won't be paying a tax. I thought about that, though. Really, I did. A tire tax, you know. But I mean, I'm just trying to show you.
That's a long way ride from Prescott to here.
Yes, it is. But to answer your question, we think that's a legal perception of what we can do with the bill. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but the people around me say that that having an deflator actually, is the thing we need to do. And I know it's a bitter pill for a lot of people, but if we don't get a hold of this, we'll never get a hold of it. If not now, when? And if we don't do it, who will do it?
And on that note, I want to thank our panel members for graciously waking up very early this morning to join us, and to our sponsors, thank you again. And to everybody, have fun and enjoy the rest of your day.
I was definitely on my minority here. Good thing I'm used to that.
Yeah. No, but here,
Until next time.
we do, I was definitely in the minority here. Was that on purpose?
Over there.
Thank you, Luigi.
Everything by design.